I'm Melissa Chartrand. I'm joined here by Stephen Colella, who today we will talk both about what you do professionally, Stephen, but also we're here really to talk about your role with community theater. So I'm so happy you could join us. Many of our viewers may know you. You've been long time involved in radio.
This is true, yes.
And even a personal chef.
Yes.
Some may know that way.
A little bit of that, yeah.
And we see you running, I know I was joking off camera, I see you running around town literally for your businesses, but also you're an avid runner as well. You live right here in the big city of Hyannis.
I do.
And love every minute of it. We see you all over the place. And then you find sometimes, somehow, with all these other things and interests, to be very involved in community theater.
Yes, I've been fortunate to have lived on the Cape since 1983. And in that time, I think I've probably done more than 20 community theater productions. The Cape is a wonderful place to express yourself as an actor, as a director, as a set designer, as a costumer, because almost every town has an opportunity, from Woods Hole all the way to Provincetown and almost every town in between. So I've always said that I've tried to engage myself in as many different theaters as possible. I even put one out of business once, which not intentionally, but it's a tough run. But no, it's been terrific. It's a great way of giving back to the community, but also connecting with the community. So many of my friends that I've become close to over the years have been folks that I've gotten to know initially through community theater.
Sure, I think it's a great way. Now, your background, have you always been involved in theater, even in high school and college days?
I have, to an extent. I would go back even a little bit further. When I was in high school, I grew up in Providence. And our school used to load us onto a bus about once or twice a year and take us down to Trinity, at the time it was Trinity Rep, but Trinity Square Theater downtown. And we kind of went reluctantly, and then once we went down there and we saw some of the productions, we were just amazed. The artistic director at the time was a gentleman named Adrian Hall, who was, I think, there for probably 26 years. And he was a very forward-thinking director, and we saw some, now you can see anything you want online. We saw things in the theater that just really opened our eyes. But more than anything, we saw really good drama, we saw good theater, we saw terrific performances. So it encouraged us, or gave us incentive to audition when we were in high school. The first show that I did was Guys and Dolls, and then I was in a production of The Crucible, shows that a lot of high schools do. And it was something I was able to carry on into college. And when I got out of school, I missed it very much, and a couple of years later found myself here on the Cape and saw this incredibly diverse and strong theater performing arts community that exists here.
I think it speaks to, as you say, you never know where that somewhat of aha or inspiration comes from, and how wonderful where you didn't think you were going to like it. And that's what I always tell my kids, go with no expectations and you might be pleasantly surprised.
Exactly. Again, we went reluctantly, and it just opened up our eyes to a whole new world. So yes, take your kids, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren to the theater.
Sure. And even yourselves as adults. I think there's so many adults that don't do that or are reluctant to get involved. And you speak to that too, as in the community. What a wonderful way, if you're not from the area, or even if you are from the area, that you get into your own routine, and this might push some people out of their comfort zones and the friendships that are formed. And even if you're not on stage, you and I had also chatted. I was involved in theater in high school, but I was backstage crew. But I loved the theater family and being a part of that.
Everyone gets involved. We have one member of our cast right now, and Annie, who's only lived on the Cape for less than 2 years, but he immediately immersed himself into theater, and he's got a great diversity of talents, and he is now known by so many folks and has so many friends and feels so connected with the community through his involvement with the theater.
That's so important. So let's talk a little bit. We're gonna chat about Annie, which is one of my all-time favorite plays, and so how perfect for the holiday time and your role there. But before we do that,
do they know I'm playing Miss Hannigan?
Yeah. No. There you go. Lots of surprises. Why, you talked about why you get involved, but do you look for the plays? Do you just say, I'm going to go do something at this theater and then see what they're producing? I mean, how does that whole thing
That's a
work
great
for
question. When I was a younger actor, I had a broad range of roles that were available to me to audition for. Now, as I've become an older actor and an actor with a shaved head, there are only 2 roles left. One is Daddy Warbucks, which I am playing, and the other was the King of Siam in The King and I. And ironically, both of those shows are in production right now on Cape Cod. And when it came down to it, I chose to audition for Annie. I had done a show at the Cotuit Center for the Arts last year, loved my experience there, and was really hoping that I'd have an opportunity to perform there again. But you look at the theater, you look at the director, you look at many times it comes down to the energy or the vibe, or maybe you've gone to the theater and had a good experience and you'd say there's something special going on here. And really, as you look around the Cape right now, there are so many productions that are up this week, and so many of them are terrific productions.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can't say that enough, is that the amount of theaters are here, the quality of productions, and it's year-round. Things don't shut down. There is such top-quality productions here, Cape-wide.
Before we opened, we had probably close to 14 straight days of rehearsal with 1 night off.
Wow.
And it's a huge show. There's a lot involved in terms of costumes and sets and music and dance and everything else. But on the Saturday night that everyone had off, what did they do? Did they go home, have a good home-cooked meal, and go to sleep early? No. Almost everyone went to see a show somewhere else.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That leads me to my next question: is how do you practice for a role? Do you want to continue the second half of the interview with in character?
Oh my God, no. The character, no. It's really what I found interesting with Annie is that it is in a historical context. It's set in 1933, and there are references throughout the show to actual figures from that time. So it really was a lot of research that I did. FDR is actually one of the characters in the show, but all of his cabinet members, there are references to Barney Baruch, who was a big financier at the time, Don Mudge, who was a big tennis player, his name gets tossed out there. Even understanding what an automat was. I'd heard the term, but I wasn't really sure exactly what it is. We have references to the Roxy Theater and everything else, a lot of New York references. So there was a lot of, sort of getting a sense of the place and the time as well. To research the role of Daddy Warbucks, I looked back at some of the comics, the original comics, just to see what his, what sort of posture he had and how he used his hands and arms, what sort of a costume he had, always with the bow tie. He's got this sparkling diamond that, that sits here. But actually learning the role is, for me, the biggest challenge, just in terms of the memorization and learning the lines and tying that in with your blocking where you move on stage and the choreography. And I try to assault my memory banks in every way that I possibly can. Reading the script, I record all of my lines, and I listen to my lines. And then one thing that I found is very helpful is to actually write out your lines. So if you kind of approach it from every different angle, eventually one morning you wake up and it's like, I know my lines. Wow, I never thought. So.
Do you get nervous?
I tend to get excited as opposed to nervous. I feel it's sort of the same energy, but I try to not funnel it into nervousness. I try to make it, excited about, performing tonight.
Sure.
Yeah.
And each performance, because as you say, it's usually a run of a week or 2 weeks. Do you gain new experiences every time? I imagine, I'm going to ask the question, but almost answer it, that I'm sure that every night is different for you and what you get from that.
And that is, in essence, what live theater is all about.
Sure.
The greatest, my youngest sister is very involved in the film world, and everything there, it's long days of, you can do the same scene over and over and over again. And how you perform as an actor, you're not so much in control of it. It's really what happens in the editing room, when it all comes down to it. On stage, you're on the high wire without a net every single night. And inevitably, when you have a cast, and we probably have close to 30 folks in the cast, someone is going to do something different. Something is going to happen. A prop might be missing. A set piece might not be exactly where it should be. So you're never bored. And there's always that opportunity or that potential for something exciting happening.
Sure. On stage from the cast of characters, and then I'm sure audience interaction plays a big part.
Absolutely.
Where you think they were going to laugh and they didn't.
Absolutely, yes.
Or they did laugh and they weren't,
as an actor, you can fall into that
Sure.
trap, and there's no more empty feeling than delivering your line and waiting for the laugh, and it's like,
right,
oh,
okay.
not tonight, and you move on. You go as quickly as you
Sure.
can.
Sure.
But no, our audiences are very, very gracious and very, very welcoming, and they understand that we are not professional actors. We have day jobs, each and every one of us. We're teachers, we're students, we're lawyers, we work in grocery stores. We come from all
Sure.
walks of life, and this is the second job that we have, and it's a very demanding job.
It is. It sounds like, and I'm sure from what goes into it, and you're working long and hard all day, but the passion
Yeah.
and the energy, you probably don't feel that, and all the time that goes to practice. It's not begrudgingly that you rehearse and put the time in.
No, not at all. It's a great departure. It's the greatest hobby. And what's wonderful about it is that each show is finite. It has a beginning and an end, and you invest your energy and your time into it. It's incredibly rewarding, and then you can recover.
Sure. So let's talk about Annie before we go. Very
Sure.
exciting, as I say. I grew up in the New Jersey area, and it was very easy to get into the city. It was one of the first shows I remember seeing when it first came to Broadway, and I just loved it. And so I'm so excited to go see it at Cotuit Center. Of course, they do everything. I love all the productions there, but this one, especially with the kids, and there's two different
Yes.
Annies and your
Yes.
role, and the director, Jay Stewart, has put some interesting twists into it too.
Yeah, Jay, I've never worked with Jay before, but he's well thought of in the community, and it's just been absolutely delightful working with him. He went to the Ringling Brothers Clown College and graduated from there 25 years ago, and he and his wife, I understand, have both made a career in that realm. And he's incredibly talented as a performer. He's very funny, he's big, he's got a great voice. But he has taken that energy and he has really infused it into the show. There's a good amount of physical comedy in the show that he's put in there, and stuff that makes we can see it every night and we laugh every night. So he's made it really energetic and enjoyable. He's worked so well with the orphans, who are absolutely adorable. They're terrific in the show, and you mentioned going when you were younger to see the show. The show debuted in 1977 on Broadway, and it won the Tony Award for Best Musical that year. But it won the award for both the music and for the script. So not only is it great music that everybody leaves the theater, humming and singing along to, but the story is really an engaging story. It's a very heartwarming story, and it's a great story for the holidays.
Sure, it's a wonderful message. Well, thank you so much for coming. I want our viewers to make sure they can get information on Annie, which runs through December 21st at Cotuit Center for the Arts, and you can find out about all the upcoming productions. And I'm sure we'll find some other roles for bald-headed actors.
That
or we'll get you some wigs.
Exactly. I can only hope.
Stephen, it's been such a pleasure talking
Melissa,
to you.
thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I'm Melissa Chartrand, wishing you an artful day.